the land of the dead. But sometimes, just sometimes, the crow can bring that soul back to put the wrong things right.
You're all going to die.
Is that gasoline I smell?
Victims, aren't we all?
Wow, welcome everybody. And as you can see, isn't there a difference from when you have a good quality product to when you don't? Today I'm doing a very special DC afternoon, and I'm doing this because if you guys didn't see, go check out my review of the new remake of The Crow 2024. But today, normally I do stuff about DC. And I do believe the original Crow is in the vein of DC Comics, or an independent uh, comic book creator. So this kind of falls into what I do here in the afternoon. So I want to give a little background into the history of the Crow. I'm going to show a video by someone who I think sums up the thoughts pretty well, where we could kind of watch the compare and critique to 94. And I want to talk about why this movie epically fails, and why right now in the box office currently it is epically failing. Like, this movie might be uh, worsely rated by critics at the very least. Uh, it's not good, okay? Although, to be fair, audiences, for some strange reason, some people really like this movie. And I kind of want to give my opinion of what I think of this whole thing. So, we're going to get started on this beautiful day. Thank you, everybody who is watching. And let's talk about The Crow. And I'm going to talk about what I think makes a good adaptation. Like, what are my requirements for an adaptation? So, I hear people say all the time, they say, Zod, do you want to see the comic book in movie form? Is that. No, that's not what I believe what makes a good adaptation, okay? For me, what makes a good adaptation is you don't have to tell the same story, word for word, beat for beat. We already have that version. You have to tell a story that is unique but keeps the spirit of the original adaptation. Now, I'm going to read a response from the guy who made this, and why I'm doing this stream now, because I find this response really fucking agitating. Considering the bad reviews this stupid idiot got was from critics. People actually have this at 65%, right? The critics are the one who actually hate this movie. And I actually side with them. So I needed to talk about this, because this isn't just about taking the 94 adaptation and shitting all over it. Or, I'm sorry, as he said, reimagining, right? This is about what makes a story that you choose to adapt so special, and why you have to be respectful to what the story that you are trying to adapt. Otherwise, it's not the same thing. You're literally telling a new tale. And I'm gonna get into the characters and everything else, and why I feel like this just fails epically. But the first thing I want to talk about for me is what is the adaptation and what makes it an effective adaptation. Take, for instance, Marvel and every character they ever adapted. Most of the times they did the bare bones, but the spirit of the character is what sells you on the adaptation. And this movie does not capture anything about the original story. So let me just set up a little bit and tell you guys how The Crow was even started in the first place. The original baseline, like, what is this thing about? Why did people connect? So if you guys don't know, The Crow was originally made by an artist, and I want to look this up because I forgot the dude's name, and I really want to get some of the facts right because I think it's important into understanding why this adaptation is so important. So, the Crow's comic was originally made by this artist. What is his name? Frank Fontaine. Yeah. Uh, the original artist of this comic, right? If you guys don't know the setup and why it's so personal, he had a tragedy happen. His wife was killed in a hit and run by a drunk driver, and they never found the person who did it. So, as a way for the artist to get out their frustrations and their dark feelings that they were having and their messed up thoughts, they created this comic as an outlet using a character who has more power than they do in order to get this revenge and really as a catharsis for their situation. So, just picture that. The dude who wrote this comic book had a real life fucked up personal tragedy happen. And within that, he created one of the most beloved fictional pieces of art. So, just to recap, the dude who wrote this comic book, he lost someone personal to him. His wife was hit by a drunk driver, and they never caught the guy. And that's how this comic started. This comic literally started in tragedy. Okay, so let's skip to 1994, and this comic has sold a lot, came out of nowhere, crushed it in sales, and now they want to make an adaptation. Now, if you guys don't know, Brandon Lee, who was one of my favorite up and coming actors at the time, was the son of Bruce Lee, and his father had tragedy that happened, so this story resonated with Brandon Lee. Brandon Lee personally had his agent handpick this role because of what the subject material was on, and he felt like he could connect with the main character of this movie. If you watch the old interviews, he felt connected to this character because of his own personal tragedies. And then on top of all of that, skip to the actual filming of this movie, and Brandon Lee was killed. Very freak accident. And his death wasn't the only one. There were a lot of people who got hurt or injured or died on the set of this movie in 1994, right? Brandon Lee was killed by a prop gun failure, and a stunt driver was killed during the scene where they take it's not Fun Boy, but yeah, I think it was Fun Boy's car or something, and they drive it off of a cliff into a river. The stunt guy died shooting that. What up, KH? Strap in. This is going to be a long rant. I'm going to do a comparison from 94 Crow to this new fucking flop of a movie. So, this comic, so just to recap for everyone who might join or who are just joining, so this whole comic book, the whole premise of this story, hey Lemon Pie, is rooted in tragedy. The original artist lost his wife in a hit and run. Brandon Lee lost his life doing this role and originally took the role because of the death of his father, and he connected with the tragedy of the character. This property has literally been about pain and sorrow and finding hope through the pain and the sorrow and misery of these tragic events that happen. So when people came on and for some reason on Rotten Tomatoes, the poor bastards who've seen this somehow has a 65% from the audience, but a 21 from critics. And I actually agree with critics. So I really wanted to cover this today. And I'm going to show a video that very well compares the 94 to the 2024. But I do have to say, this baffles my mind because, as usual, I wasn't going to do anything about this. I was done after my rant. I was not going to say nothing. But the fucking artist had to come out and run his fucking mouth about fans. Which the irony of the statement I'm going to read you that he wrote is that the fucking fans didn't bash this movie. It was the critics. The critics shot this thing into the ground. Fans were actually like, it was okay. So I want to start off with this idiot's statement. and then I'm going to go into a compare and contrast, and then just wrap up and give my final thoughts. So hang on, it's going to be a fun morning. I don't know why I do this to myself. Like I had hope this was going to be fucking good. I should have known this was where it was going. So let's do this first article from comicbooks.com. And this is the Crow's cinema score has been revealed. Director response to the backlash to fans who are very active online. And this is the irony. This has nothing to do with the fans online. Like, honestly, the reception online for most people have been mid to whatever. I feel like I'm one of the few people actually pissed off by the audacity of this movie existing. But so this to me is another thing where these directors just need to shut the fuck up and take their loss. Like, you adapted one of the most cult classic beloved films. You fuck it up, you take the criticism. If it was over something stupid, but most of the comments are this movie is just soulless and what it does different, nobody asked for. It's I'll get into my thoughts when I break that down. But so let's see what this guy says to defend his art. Jesus Christ. Um so moviegoers shared their thoughts on The Crow, and the cinema score is any indication they're enjoying it no more than critics. What does Rupert Sanders make of the backlash though? Lion Gates waited as long as possible before lifting The Crow's review embargo, seeing that it sits at 21% on Rotten Tomatoes, what critics' consensus call it dreary and poorly paced, which is true. The pacing is god awful in this movie. It's not hard to see why. Now, though regular moviegoers are chiming in with their thoughts, and well, they're seemingly no better. So, Jesus Christ, no, I do not want to do this. I don't want to subscribe to your site. Oh my God, can I get past that? Yes, I can. Okay, so The Crow has been awarded a B cinema score, putting it on par with Dark Phoenix, which was a piece of crap. The new Hellboy, which sucked. Sin City: A Dame to Kill For was okay. Hulk was alright, and The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and Punisher Warzone are a masterpiece compared to this movie. So yeah, it's in really bad company. This is probably an unmitigated disaster as far as things go. Um, in some respects, it feels like the odds have been stacked against the Crow from the beginning. The response to the news of the reboot was met largely with negative reception, and the trailer received a surprising amount of scorn. No, it's not surprising. People were like, "Why are you making this?" And they said, particularly for Bill Skarsgård's appearance as Eric, yes, because he looks very depressed. He looks like a depressed Crow. He looks like a Jared Leto knockoff. Nobody wants that. That the paint job on this is terrible. And when we get to the video that shows this, I'll show you guys the difference. But you guys saw the trailer I played in the beginning. I mean, take that badass setup and then look at his makeup. Even the makeup's a joke. Like, so talking to Entertainment Weekly, director Rupert Sanders responded to some of the backlash. I think a lot of people are very active online and not so active in life, he stated. Get out, do something, and have less time throwing stones. So let me just recap that. This arrogant, pompous son of a bitch whose movies I will never watch, right? He says your opinion, his thoughts of your feedback, and most of it wasn't even negative from people. I had somebody go in my comments and say, I didn't think it was that bad, and I explained my reasonings and gave him a thumbs up. I'm like, good. I'm glad you fucking enjoyed the movie. I wish I enjoyed the movie. You know what? I don't want to be a negative, cynical prick. I would like to be happy. My default mode is not being pissed off. Look at all this pink. This is actually, Bitchy did this, but I like to be a happy guy. I don't want to be fucking negative. But when you tell me After making a piece of shit movie, you tell me I need to go outside and get some fresh air and stop throwing stones? How do you think people got to the theater, you dumb idiot? I, I went outside, I took my car, I went to the theater, I paid money to see your fucking film, which sucked. I got pissed off, and then I was happy when I went online and I bitched about it because your movie sucks. Okay? This whole thing that it's online internet trolls and they need to go outside and breathe in fresh air is the stupidest fucking argument for somebody who does a movie because we're literally going outside to a theater to pay to watch a shitty movie. So no, I hate that excuse that, oh, you guys are all online trolls and you need to go find something to do in your life. Fuck you, make a better movie. Okay? How about you make good fucking products? I went outside. I got fresh air. Now because of you, I'm going to stay indoors because I'm traumatized from this experience. So thank you. The one time I went outside and I touched grass or whatever the fuck these idiots say, I was actually scarred for life. It's such a tone deaf, ignorant response, and it shows the lack of accountability for actually just making something good. Why don't you just fucking make something good? How about that? How about you actually make something enjoyable that people won't bitch about? How about you stop taking things that were good and fucking them up? Can we get that? But no, it's always the person, it's always the fans who are paying money to the director. Like your job is simple. You make entertainment. If it's not good, you take the fucking hit and you learn. You don't sit there and bash the people who are paying $10 a ticket to see your fucking movie. And that is what inspired me to do this stream because I wouldn't even be talking about this piece of shit and getting my blood pressure so high if I didn't read this stupid fucking comment. Thank you, Lemon Pie. Yeah, it's bullshit. It's bullshit, and I think that it's wrong to tell people that their opinion are wrong because your fucking feelings are hurt. Because you made a shitty product that nobody liked. Like, back in the day, look at Batman, okay? Look at Batman and Robin back in the day. To this day, the director is apologizing for that film. And he came out and he said, yeah, guys, I fucked up. I made a bad Batman movie. My bad. You know, it's not my finest moment. Joel Silverman or who made that, right? He came out and he said, you know what, guys? You're right. This movie wasn't good. And you know what? I can forgive him. I can even find enjoyment in that film a couple of years later. And I can respect the fact that he did a shitty movie and he realized the movie wasn't the quality of film that it could have been. But when you come out and you start blaming people for your fuck up, that to me shows what kind of character that this person has. Like they don't give a shit about making anything good. They want to uh they think their own art is just the best and that nobody understands them. It's like, no, I understand what you're saying. I think it's shit. You're like, you could put your vision out there, but you're putting it in a public space. So if I think your vision is shit, well, and I'm not alone, then obviously it's something with you. It's not me. I don't understand it. So he goes on to say that the filmmaker added that I think it would be great just for people to know that this is a reimagining. Yes, reimagining. See, hiding behind words. You could say reboot, you could say redo, reimagining, requel, prequel, sequel, whatever the fuck you want to dress it up as. You could reimagine till the cows come home. If it sucks, it sucks. No fucking label changes the fact that this fucking thing sucks. And I hate the labels of it. Well, no, guys, this is a reimagining. It's not even a reboot. We're doing something completely different. So therefore, my art is better. No, your your imagination sucks. What do you want me to say? Like, labeling it something different doesn't automatically make the product better. It's about putting out a shitty product. Like, this guy is so out of touch. It's astonishing. I haven't recorded over anyone's VHS. You can still go and see that movie. And I hope this movie resonates with people who love that movie when they were in their teens. This is my version of that text. It was my adaptation of James's graphic novel, which I loved. And I don't buy that. And I don't buy that. You want to know why I don't buy that? Okay, I'm going to go over in this video about the problems with the adaptation itself. But this movie adapts nothing from the fucking comic book. Nothing. There is nothing new added, nothing different about this version except for it sucks. Okay, it doesn't bring anything new to the table. The 94 version didn't faithfully adapt the original graphic novel to a T either, but it adapted the characters and the spirit of what that story was. Okay, this is a tragic love story, and I don't buy the tragedy in this love story because of the decisions that were made. And the characters are 20 times worse in this version and aren't even the same. Like, literally, these characters are only the characters by name. They do not share any of the traits across any version of the medium. So you could have just made something different. This is not The Crow. This is a movie that he wanted to make that couldn't get funded, so he slapped The Crow on it, okay? I don't believe this guy even read the fucking material that he was adapting. I think he got the cliff notes of the 94 and said, "Oh, I can do that better." Okay, there's going to be a lot of ranting. So, and even this remark, like, look at how snarky this is. I haven't recorded over anyone's VHS. Like, dude, that is that is the worst way you could try to make people feel better about your adaptation by saying, "Oh, the original still exists. You fucking scrub. You don't like my one? You could go back and watch your VHS." Like, fuck you, dude. Like, fuck you. Okay, I gave your shitty version a chance, thinking you might have something to say, and then the audacity to sit here and in an article basically tell all the fans to go fuck themselves if they don't like what you put out, and then wonder why this movie's fucking failing. I do not, I don't comprehend the strategy behind what he's saying here. Like, what are you trying to do? Just piss off everybody? Because you did a great job. And the article even says this: telling upset fans to go touch grass doesn't seem like the smartest way to win them over. Though Sanders is right that this take on The Crow is very different from the 1994 predecessor, now considered a classic. So here's the score. The Crow is directed by Robert Sanders, a script by Zach Baleen and Will Snyder. Producers include Edward R. Pressman, Samuel Hadi, Victor Hadi, John Jakes, and Molly Hassel. Bill Skarsgård plays Eric along with FKA Twigs as Shelley, his ill-fated lover. The supporting cast includes Danny Houston, which I feel really bad for him because he was actually good, and I don't give a shit enough to say the other actors because they weren't important. So, uh, so before I continue with this video, like, you could hear in the voice, and yes, Lemon Pie, yes, I was just coming back to that. Yes, the VHS comment was snarky dig at everyone who thinks the original is better. Exactly. Like, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And I wasn't going to go in on this movie. I had said my piece in my review. You can go check out my non-spoiler review, but I'm going to actually do some spoilers today in order to exactly highlight my issues with this movie. And if you give a fuck about seeing this, which honestly, don't waste your time, uh, then warning. But I'm going to show this video that I think is very good. I put the links in the descriptions below. Go check this channel out. Show them some love. This is by another Nick, and I have the actual video in the links in the descriptions where you could go and check it out for yourself. But I'm going to watch this compare video because I really want to stop and highlight and even show some things that he points out that I think are very good and are better than I can do a compare and contrast because I don't have all the fucking clips, and YouTube's very funny about that. So let's watch another Nick, because I did like this critique, and I do want to point out some of the things that he points out as far as comparing these two movies. So his video is called "Is The Crow 2024 better than 1994?" And the answer to that is no, not in this universe, not in any other. It's terrible.
The new iteration of The Crow has landed in theaters, and everyone has been wondering, is this new remake better than the 1994 original? I'm going to answer that question today by going over each film and scoring them in 4 separate categories. Then at the end of the video, I'll compare the final scores of each film. The categories I'll be scoring The Crow films in are: story, which includes the plot elements and pacing of each movie; characters, which focuses on character writing and performances; film.
I could tell you if I was doing something like this, the story would be like a 1, the characters would be a 1, filmmaking would be probably a 5 or 6 because it was pretty good. And then I don't know what his new one
Filmmaking,
is,
which
but that's
includes
hilarious.
directing, cinematography, special effects, etc., and most importantly, effectiveness. How well each film succeeds and what it intended to do. Let's see how these films compare and take a closer look at 1994's The Crow.
The Crow.
Before making this video, I have never seen The Crow before. I always meant to check it out, but I guess I never quite found the time. But now that I have,
So just think about it this way too. This is a newer reviewer who is not in this era. So this movie, it like just freezing on this frame aesthetically, this movie captures the feel and the tone of what you're going for as far as a dark revenge plot goes. And I mean, just off the architecture and the way the shots are framed, the way it's always like a blood red sky in every scene. This is what I talk about when I talk about like filmmaking, right? Like for me, the new one, the first mistake I noticed is that it's very clean. It's very bright. There's a lot of bright moments, and the dark moments are too watered down. Like a lot of the scenes in the new one don't capture the feeling of pain or torture or whatever else. Like you look at this visual and you already get a sense of what the city is like, right? It's very dirty, it's very dungy. The music matches the feel and the aesthetics. And this is what I mean when I talk about how even the tone of a film sets up what it's going to be like. Now, when they show the visuals of the new one, I'll kind of get to what that's like, but it's like even the tone is off, and it doesn't, it's right off the bat starts off on the wrong foot. But let's get back to 94
I've seen
because
it. I'm
it's a
honestly
fair
kind
comparison.
of blown away. First of all, the visuals in this movie are insane. I haven't seen any Alex Proyas movies before besides Gods of Egypt.
Let Ra himself hear you.
He really
Oh,
captures
Gods
the
of
dark and gritty underworld of this city. Every frame of this film is dingy and captures the brutality of the world these characters live in. And there are a bunch of creative, memorable shots, like every time we take to the sky with the crow, or the reveal.
Oh, that's another one too. If you watch the original movie, The Crow is a big like highlight because you know the movie's called The Crow. It's a new movie, not so much. So that
Of Eric Draven's full transformation, or even the shot of Eric in the pawn shop door. And the cinematography by Darius Wolski is so unique. The gothic style with the creative use of color and lighting really emphasizes the dark nature of the story. Also, it has like just a real cool vibe to it, and the visual.
that's one of my favorite scenes, probably one of my favorite cinematic scenes when he lights, where he kills, I believe it's 1010, and he lights the ground on fire and you see the big crow. Like it's little visual things like that. And that's what I mean when I talk about modern movies, right? They had such a unique feel because they had to stand out in the market back in the day, right? And for me, the Crow's visuals for being in 1994 to this day still hold up, and aesthetically are so unique and different. So that's what I mean when I talk in my critique about like this movie doesn't want to be compared to 94, but the fact of the matter is you took the character and named him Eric. So automatically people are going to associate it with the 94 movie. And it's just so ahead of what was going on during the time period. Like, this movie truly was ahead of its time. I think if you release this today, if you would have released this movie today, it would have did spectacular in the theater because it's so visually, aesthetically, and uh, special effects and fighting wise unique than most of the movies that come out in 2024, which is sad.
Visual flair of the film extends to the action scenes. I wouldn't say these scenes are the best of all time or anything like that, but they're appropriately brutal and well framed and fairly memorable. Eric's 1v1 against Tintin is a solid introduction to what his new powers are, and even though we don't see Tintin die on screen, seeing his body being carried away later with all his knives in him is pretty comical. I mean, look at him, he looks like a giant voodoo doll. The shootout sequence with the gang is also very exciting. It's super chaotic with Eric moving under the table and doing front flips and taking out goons, and at the end when everyone's dead, there's a super cool effect with the lighting where it almost looks like his eyes are glowing. But the real crowning jewel of action scenes in this movie is the final sequence. Eric's final fight with Top Dollar on top of the church is freaking awesome. Visually, it's gorgeous with all the rain.
Like, I also love too, there was a big trope in the 90s films where they do the classic good guy versus bad guy in a rainy setting, and you see the rain pouring down and things like that. And yeah, like this fight at the ending, it feels so epic. And if you've watched the 94 movie, I guess spoilers, please watch the 94 Crow. Don't see the new one. Go on Amazon, watch the 1994 version. But the thing I like about this battle at the ending, and we'll get to the other Crow, but in the last moments, right? This whole movie is about pain, tragedy, the loss of a loved one, what you would do for somebody you love, and how far you would go, right? And so to defeat the villain at the end of this movie, he takes all the pain and suffering that the cop played by Ernie, I forget his last name, but uh, he takes the pain that Shelley went through and he puts it into Top Dollar before he kills him and knocks him off of a roof. Like, that is so symbolic to everything that was going on through the course of the movie. And this is another agitation I have with the new film. They introduce interesting ideas, but they don't capitalize on any of them. And this is me critiquing it fairly, not leaving my bias out of it. Just thematically, this movie makes everything work. Where at the end of Crow 2024, its pacing is terrible, so the first half is slow, and then the ending, the themes don't really come together. And I'll get to that one. It's fucking stupid. It's my god.
It has some really high stakes with Sarah in danger and Eric losing his powers, and thematically it works really well with Eric turning the pain caused by Top Dollar back on himself. But these action scenes do feel limited at times, because while there are some awesome, totally seamless action shots, like the whole car chase with T-Bird, there are a few special effects moments that have not aged well.
Raptors
And
like
see,
deodorant
I disagree with that.
smells
Oh my
amazing.
god, I hate
Sweat and odor
comedic
have no
ads.
place.
I disagree with that. I think that, like, yes, there is something to say about how the effects haven't aged that well, but I would
Not where
say
the cuts on Eric's hand
it's the limitations of the times. Like you're talking about, we have amazing VFX and CGI these days that this movie could have benefit from. But 90% of what they did back in the 90s was practical. Like that whole car chase scene with T-Bird is practical effects. Like they're really racing towards a dam. You got stuntmen in the cars. So I don't think I necessarily agree with his assessment about the effects don't age well. I would say they age better today than the shit that I see, because some of the CGI in some movies is just god awful. So I think that's more of a subjective opinion.
hands just fade away, or this shot of Eric falling from his apartment, or this scene where Brandon Lee is very obviously holding a fake arm. It just kind of reminds me of Toy Story where Woody is holding Buzz's arm and the rest of the toys are just like,
Yo, holy he dead!
But the main reason this film is so well remembered is because of its main character, Eric Draven. He is such a compelling and empathetic protagonist. His story in The Crow is really simple. He was brought back to life to get revenge on the criminals who killed him and his fiancée. But the movie is able to give him so much depth through his actions and through the showcases of his pain. He has flashes of his memories with Shelley, little moments, big moments, everything. This is a really good depiction of how when you lose someone, all you have left of them are the memories, and those memories can hurt. Eric is also really compelling.
And I just wanted to highlight this. This is super important, and I want to make this point. The biggest issue for me with this new version versus 1994 is that they take 45 minutes of this new movie to show you the love between Eric and Shelley. But it doesn't land because the actors, especially FKA Twigs, are fucking terrible at conveying those feelings. Like Bill Skarsgård is trying, and I said in my review, I think he's one of the best parts. He's just given nothing to work with. And FKA Twigs, I hear she's an artist, whatever. I'm sure she makes great music, but she fucking sucks in this movie. So I don't buy any of their chemistry. So you can sit there and put 45-minute love story at the beginning half of your movie. That doesn't mean you're going to make it better than the original because, oh, I'm actually showing them in love, because you make them two fucking drug addicts that meet and rehab and go on a week-long bender of doing drugs and having sex. And that's supposed to win me over that they're in love. Like, no, in the original Crow, you could see his memories and the way things were fragmented, and you can feel the pain because he literally felt the pain of her death and he carried it with him through his quest for vengeance. So, I mean, it's a really odd choice and stupid, and I hated it.
Compelling with how he uses these terrible things that happen to him as a way to help others. He gives Ernie Hudson, policeman, advice about appreciating the little things in life. He helps Sarah get her mom off drugs. And most importantly, he helps this horrible city by ridding it of this criminal gang. And it must be said, Brandon Lee is so fantastic in this role. He captures Eric's despair and destruction so well, but he's also great at playing up the more insane, humorous moments. He also brought the physicality when needed, and he was just so perfect as this character. I think it's pretty well known by now that Brandon Lee passed away during a tragic accident while filming this movie, so I won't go into it too much, but it truly is a tragic loss. None of the other characters are on the same level as Eric Draven. I really like Ernie Hudson, but his character was kinda two-dimensional, and I could say the same for
And I disagree with this assessment. I think the actress who did Shelley was pretty good. Ernie Hudson was just, police cop number one, and he still made the role very memorable. So that in the review is where I
Sarah. She was kind of a
disagree.
boring kid character. The villains are also very lackluster. The four criminals who killed Eric and Shelley are laughably dumb and evil. In one of the early scenes we get of them, they're swallowing bullets for some reason. Like, you know you're gonna have to pass those at some point, right? That's probably not gonna be a very fun experience. But at least these chuckleheads die in satisfying ways.
Spectrum Mobile's new deal
Which
is so good.
like, I agree with some of that, but for me, I don't know. I think Sarah was fine. She's a good kid.
And I don't think he's awful, but Top Dollar is a sort of bland antagonist. His whole thing is, I just want anarchy and chaos, blah, blah, blah. I'm the Joker, baby! But at least Michael Wincott gives a really solid performance. This movie can also be really funny at times. It's refreshing to watch a superhero movie have actual attempts at comedy, and not just the MCU, well, that just happened kind of humor. The scene of Eric interrogating the pawn shop owner is so unserious. He's throwing the guy around the store, hanging on the ceiling like a bat, and dousing him with gas. These moments of levity help to balance out the dark tone of the film. And another thing,
And I agree with that too. Like, one of the great things about this movie is how it captures the humorous side of Eric Draven. Like, Eric feels like a fucking person as opposed to the 2024 version where they feel like actors. Like, I buy into that this was a living, breathing person who could have been funny at one point or someone that you hung out with. And this is what I mean when I say adapting something. Okay. So, going back to my whole adaptation argument, when I talk about adapting a character, right, and making a good adaptation for me is capturing the spirit of the original work, right? Because the original work was dark and gritty, but there was very dark, humorous stuff. Even in the comic books, that was super dark, but there was some moments of levity or dark comedy, as people would call it, right? And so that's what I mean with capturing the faithfulness of the source material. You don't have to go one for one, but I do believe if you're adapting something, you should at least get the spirit of what that creative thing was. If you're going to label yourself as this movie, and even if you're reimagining it, right, you should at least get the essence of what that movie was. Take, for instance, I like Roadhouse, right? And a lot of people, some people don't like it over the original, whatever, but it was pretty well received. And why it was so well received was not that it did everything the first Roadhouse did, but it just took everything from the original Roadhouse. They changed a lot of things, but they kept the spirit of what that movie was, as opposed to trying to change everything about the movie and call it a reimagining. And you'll see when we get to the new one. Oh my God, the choices they make are baffling.
Thing that balances out that dark tone is the film's message. It never rains all the time. Despite all the terrible things that happen in the movie, Eric is still able to show others that there is still joy in bad times. There is still light at the end of the tunnel. Before watching The Crow for the first time, I thought it was this dark, angsty, dreadful movie, but I'll remember it as a hopeful story with a fantastic lead character, great action scenes, some well-placed comedy, and absolutely gorgeous imagery. Now, let's see how The Crow scores. For story, I'm going to give The Crow a 7 out of 10. It's a very simple revenge tale, but it has sprinkles.
I could get behind that, because the thing about the Crow story is, to its core, the Crow story is a revenge thriller, whatever. It's a simplistic story according to how this person is grading it, and I can 100% get behind that. I do think the nuances within the storytelling is what brings out more than what the story is presenting itself as, because at the end of the day, The Crow is just about getting revenge for the person that you loved. So
Of
I,
deeper, more optimistic themes. For characters, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Eric Draven is an incredibly well-written main character, but the rest of the cast is kind of flat. Filmmaking,
I disagree with that. I would give it at least a 7 or an 8. I get what he's saying, but for me, I think for secondary characters, you could do a hell of a lot worse.
I'm going to give this film an 8 out of 10. Outside of some mid special effects and some shots that haven't aged all that well, The Crow is a visually pleasing, beautiful film. And finally, for effectiveness, I'm going to give this movie a 9 out of 10. The Crow
And I 100% agree with that. Like, for me, this is how you do an adaptation. Like, oh my God, so great. So great.
out to deliver a superhero experience unlike any other, with unique visuals, story, and action. And I think for the most part, it delivers that unique experience. And with these scores added up, The Crow 1994 earns a final score of 7.5 out of 10. Now let's see how the 2024 remake compares.
Are you sweet talking me?
Oh my God, that is so true. Like, look at Jared Leto's face paint. This is what I feel like this movie tried to imitate, because they were both in production at around 2008. Well, Suicide Squad had already come out, but The Crow was in production since 2008. So clearly, someone loved the Jared Leto Joker, the one idiot somewhere.
I have to make a slight correction to something I said earlier. This new Crow movie isn't a remake, it's a re-adaptation.
So I hate that. I hate readaptation or reimagining, and I just stress that. Like, that doesn't make it any different. You're still adapting The Crow. So now you're being judged on your own merits and the 94 version.
That's something that people are arguing about online. But with that said, The Crow 2024 straight up sucks. Look,
Like, I agree. I agree. This movie straight up sucks. I could not have said it any better. And now this isn't just me talking. Like, when you compare to what the comic books were, or what the 94 version is, or what they did with the sequels, I would watch the sequels over this movie ever again. Like, if you guys ever have a chance, see the Crow Wicked Prayer with Edward Furlong. That is more entertaining. You have David Boreanaz and Tyra Reed, and it is god awful. And I had fun with that movie. This was a chore for me to sit through. It was so bad. So hopefully he points out some of the things that I had a disagreement with.
tried. I went into this movie with an open mind. I'm not even
So
someone
did
who
I.
has nostalgia blindness for the original film. I watched it a week ago for the first time, but this new movie just fails in every way. And there may be spoilers ahead, just a fair warning. For starters,
Yes, just to let everybody know, I am getting into spoilers on this one, because in order to understand why this movie sucks, I think we got to get into the nuts and bolts. So I'll put my little ticker on spoilers ahead if you give a shit about seeing this fucking movie. So 3, 2, 1, here we go. Let's see what another person thought. Not just me. Let's see if this person who had never seen The Crow except for 2 weeks ago, right? They literally saw the original after this movie. What did they think about the movie going in blind with hope and optimism? Because I sure as shit didn't have any.
There are some baffling story decisions. Eric doesn't fully transform into the Crow until the last 30 minutes of the movie. He is resurrected and gets some of his powers before that, but he doesn't fully become the hero until late in the film, or really do much of importance up until that point. The film also really focuses on Shelley, which certainly was a choice. For maybe the first 35 to 40 minutes of the movie before she dies, she's really the main character, and the narrative is completely changed to revolve around Shelley. Instead of Eric being resurrected to avenge himself and her, he's instead resurrected to kill the main villain of the movie, and in return, the Crow God or whoever this is will bring Shelley back to life. And while this
So just so we have this straight, just so we're clear about what the premise is, okay? So the Crow movie, which is supposed to be about the Crow, and which is about Eric Draven avenging his love, and they switched the focus to Shelley for about 40 minutes of the movie, which, spoilers, absolutely fucking nothing comes of it, right? They focus a whole 40 minutes. The character you came to see, the person you were sold the ticket to see the Crow. You don't see Bill Skarsgård become the Crow to last fucking 30 minutes of the film. And I thought maybe I exaggerated the times, but I was fucking spot on. It was like 40 minutes of a painfully terrible love story. And then it was another 20 to 30 minutes of him having half-assed Crow powers. And then the last 30 minutes of the film is him as the Crow. Like, even I can't even put into words how fucking stupid of a move this is. Like, I don't know who thought this was a good idea. So we literally have a Crow movie where the first 40 minutes focus on Shelley and their supposed love. And I'm sure he's going to get into this because I was baffled. But I literally had somebody an hour into a 2-hour movie walk out of the movies at about an hour. So that should tell you, yeah, nobody really liked that decision. Jesus Christ.
this story change might work for some people, it didn't work for me at all. Because they tried so hard to make Shelley more of a character, Eric in turn didn't receive nearly as much characterization, and so both of them just became nothing burgers that I didn't care about at all. Also, their romance was somehow far worse here than in the original movie. We only got snippets of Eric and Shelley together, but they were enough to make you believe that these two actually loved each other. But in this new Crow movie, we get like half an hour of them on screen together, and there is nothing there. There is no chemistry between these two characters, and it felt really awkward at times. Also, this is
So here's the thing too that I want to point out, kind of piggybacking on that. In this movie, they meet in rehab. Okay, they are both. She's sent there because the cops catch her, and he just happens to be there, and they're both drug addicts. And you want me to buy in a week these two random ass people out of all the people in rehab fall in love, and he's willing to go from purgatory back into our world and hunt down someone who's essentially made the deal with the devil in order to save her soul, not even his, save her soul. What? Who thought this was a good idea? I want to know who approved this. I want to slap that guy. Who saw this and said, "Yeah, that's our Crow movie." It's such a ridiculous premise. Just like saying it out loud doesn't make any sense whatsoever to anything in The Crow.
is maybe a career worst performance for both actors. I liked Bill Skarsgård in a lot of things. He's great as Pennywise, and he's really funny in Deadpool 2 and John Wick 4. For most of his performance in The Crow, he just seems bored, and it's not until the end of the movie that he actually brings some emotion and life into the character. And he also has some bad line delivery here and there, but I can't really blame him. The film's dialogue would sound bad from any actor, and
I have to stay vigilant.
Yeah, that's a huge thing too. The dialogue in this movie is fucking terrible. It is horrendous.
Twigs feels really flat as Shelly, and she also had some really terrible line delivery. The main villain of the film is a generic evil man played by Vinny Huston, who you might know as the generic evil man in Wonder Woman. Man, this guy's gonna find some new work. And as a villain, he's as boring as can be. I criticize Top Dollar for being kinda boring, but at least he had the hair, the sword, the voice. He had flair. Vincent.
Yeah, and here's the thing too. Yeah, I just like, okay, you take Danny Houston's performance and then David Evcott. David Evcott has that gruff voice. He has the long, luscious hair, right? And like what he was saying was ridiculous, but the actor fucking sold it. Like when you're watching it, you're like, dude, this dude's insane. Like when he kills the pawn shop owner and he just stabs him with a sword and he's like, clean that up. Like this dude, just his presence commands the screen. Now, I have no issues with Danny Huston. I think he's great in the roles that he takes. He's very good, generic bad guy. Like if you just need an actor to do a bad guy, like he's fine. But it's the script doesn't give him much to work with. So you have this very generic kind of villain that's just there twirling his mustache like, I made a deal with the devil. Mwahaha. I can whisper into people's ears and make them do things. Like it's fucking stupid. It is. I don't. I just.
Rowing, if that's how you say it, has none of that. He's just a generic evil guy who made a deal with the devil and kills people for immortality or whatever. The one thing I and many other people seem to agree on is that the action scenes can be really enjoyable at times. The final set piece at the Opera House has some really bloody, gory, cool moments. It's just a real shame that it took an
And I do want to highlight. I said this in my review, and I like to highlight it again. The opera house scene is the best part of this movie. Like, just skip to the last 30 minutes. The opera house scene, there's a scene where he's on a highway and he gets hit by a car. That's pretty cool. Like, some of the action scenes in this, if this was another movie, I would be a little bit more kinder on. And the thing that pisses me off is they have a great set piece like the opera house, and the rest of the movie sucks. So, what exactly did you put your money and your time in? You just thought, oh, we don't need story. We don't need any character development. People are fucking stupid. You just throw big dumb action. They're just going to call this good. Like, and if you're one of those people who just like blood and gore and you're like, I loved it for the action, then cool. But even on that level, this movie doesn't work because an hour and fucking 40 minutes of this movie is absolutely nothing. It's a generic love story. It's him coming back the first time and not having all of his powers. It's bafflingly bad decision making that I do not understand whatsoever. It fucking mystifies my mind.
hour and 10 minutes to get to them, and every other action scene in this film is just fine. There's nothing too exciting or interesting about them. They're just run-of-the-mill action scenes. The visuals of the movie are pretty solid. There was some cool lighting at times and some shots that looked neat, but again, it doesn't really compare to the visual language of the first film at all. At least the CGI is good, especially during the moments where Eric is healing himself. That is probably the one thing this film has on the original. But my absolute least favorite part of this movie is its attempts at depth. I don't think I've ever rolled my eyes this much during a movie. These characters would say the most pretentious and cringe things throughout the entire runtime, and here's a couple direct quotes that I wrote down. If it's hard to love me harder.
Like, just think about that. I didn't even write these down because I was so mad. So, a real life saying in this movie, if it's hard to love me harder. What? Like, who looked at this script? Who looked at that line of dialogue and thought that was it? Like, there was somebody in an office who sat down and looked at that fucking line and said, "Yes, that's gonna get the kids. That's gonna hit them in the heartstrings." That is the stupidest fucking thing I think I've heard in quite some time, and I've heard some pretty terrible lines, but that's god awful. Oh, he's got some more bangers. I'm actually glad he wrote down the fucking shitty dialogue in this movie because I was so pissed off by like the first hour of this film. I was like looking at my watch to see how much time I had left in the theater because it was fucking bad.
You think angsty teens would build shrines to us?
Do you think angsty teens would build shrines? People, this is a line in the film. This was actually said by people. Just process that.
Do you think angsty teens would build shrines to us? I tried so hard not to laugh in the theater when I heard that. These freaks want to be remembered in the same breath as Slender Man. The Crow was the most trying movie for me to watch this year, and it's my least favorite film of the year so far. Seriously, I actually considered walking out of the film early. I have never done that before. So, I guess let's see how it scores. For story, I'm gonna give The Crow a 2 out of 10. Once it gets
That's
going,
pretty
it's not an awful watch, but the first hour and 10 minutes of the film are really hard to sit through. For characters, I'm gonna give The Crow a 1 out of 10. It has characters. For filmmaking, I'm gonna give The Crow a 5 out of 10. It could be well directed at times, the CGI was solid, and there are some cool action scenes, but overall, it's not very impressive. And lastly, for effectiveness, I'm going to give The Crow a 0 out of 10. This film wanted to present a new, amazing adaptation of the Crow comic book, but there was nothing amazing about it, so I'm going to give
Yes, so I agree with that. Like, as far as the main story, so the through line for The Crow is supposed to be these two are in love, blah, blah, blah. They said, do you think angsty teens or angsty goth teens will build us shrines? Like, that's the kind of level of writing we're dealing with. And someone found that fucking profound. And I 100% agree. Like, this story has these concepts that they introduce. And the main problem is they don't touch or nothing comes back to what they originally set up. So you're sitting here watching it, and by the time you get to the good shit that you came to see this movie for, like the last back end of the movie, the action, the payback, the revenge, or whatever, you're so burnt out by watching an hour and 40 minutes of a fucking ridiculously terrible love story. And look, I'm not going to say it's worse than Borderlands, because for me, Borderlands was pretty fucking trying. Like, Borderlands, I may have been more entertained at certain parts, but that was pretty fucking terrible too. But even like Madam Web, I could watch that and go, this is just bad and laugh at it. This was just like not even mocking level bad. This was like somebody thought this was great writing. Like the writer of this was super pretentious and thought this was gonna like make waves and people were gonna be talking about this fucking generations. No, people are gonna forget about this shit after this year and it'll never be talked about again. You know what will be talked about? The 1994 version of The Crow. That's what you call a timeless adaptation. This is going to be forgotten about after, I'd say after this month of it being out, it's already being pushed out of theaters. So yeah, this isn't going to go the distance. So what's the final score?
The Crow 2024 a final score of 2 out of 10. So that means out of these two films, the original Crow is by far the better film, which I'm sure a lot of you have already guessed, but here it is anyway. As always, be sure to let me know which film you enjoyed.
So definitely go check out that channel. I have their link in the description below. So my final thoughts on this and my whole point of making this stream today and talking about adaptations. Look, what makes this new version so terrible and my theory about making a good adaptation. Like, look, if you want to go closer to the source material or do your own thing, that's fine. But what for me makes a good adaptation is at least that your work of art embodies what the previous person does, like in spirit, right? You could do your own unique story, but you should at least capture the spirit and the feel of the original. And in some way, that should translate into what you're doing. Because, yes, you're not making a one for one like remake, but you are taking your ideas and trying to merge them with existing art. And that is the trick that I think a lot of these people don't understand. Okay. My biggest issue, and I think why I've gotten some comments asking me to elaborate, so I'm going to elaborate here. My biggest issue with this is not that I didn't get a one for one comparison. The 94 version already exists, and even that isn't a one for one of the original source material, but it captures the spirit of what the artist intended the comic to be. Okay? The original premise is about undying love. It's about losing the person you love in this world. And I could relate to that because if you guys don't know, I'm with Bitchy Unicorn. She's amazing and beautiful, and I love her, right? It's about taking something that you love, right? More in this world having it ripped away from you tragically, and then having the ability to come back and avenge that love. It is by a man who lost the person they love in very tragic circumstances, and they vented their feelings through this piece of art. For me, you don't get much more personal than that. And to have somebody take that concept and shit all over it, it really bugs me. And then to call people who are critiquing your work names because you did a shitty job really bugs me, because it's like you're missing the point. This new version, like everything else that's redone in this modern time, misses the point of what it's adapting, like what the premise is and what made it so special to so many people. It's not you can't remake stuff. I don't even believe anything in this world is untouchable. I think you can remake anything that's been done. Hell, no concepts are really new. It's how that you use them. Every concept has been done. I bet you anything you could think of has been made into a movie at some point in our history, right? But it's not using a concept. It's using that concept with your ideas and making it something new. That's what makes a film successful. That's what makes a movie successful. That's what makes an adaptation successful. It's not you've got to be strictly 100%. You got to follow the guidelines. It's what are you doing with it? How are you adding your own thoughts and perspective? And for me, this doesn't feel like art. This doesn't feel like anybody who cares about what they're talking about. This feels like somebody who got this script and they looked at it and they said, oh, I can do a better story. And they had to use The Crow to get any fucking traction for their film. This does not at all come off to me as someone passionate about the art that they're making. Like, sure, the visuals are great. You got good actors. But the story and the writing and what you're telling them to say conveys to me you missed the point of what the original material was selling, right? The point of, like, you focus on a love for 45 minutes, right? Good. You want to focus on the characters, but then the performances are so terrible, I buy this less than the original. You want to focus on cooler effects, but the last half hour is where all the action is. And that's what I'm saying. How this movie is constructing is the problem. It's terribly paced. It's absolutely boring, and it comes off. And this may not be the director's sentiment. Okay, the director might actually this might be what he wanted to do, and good for you. But I don't feel the passion and love that you have for this material. Just personally, what it comes off as me is a very cynical take on The Crow, a very generic, like 2024 take of this material, like a director who thinks that they are better than they actually are. And I hate to be that person and come off as a dick and say that, but just watch the movie. That's what it felt like. Like the original 1994 is a very dark, heavy, depressing movie, but there was levity and there was hope. And there's always my favorite line that I want to leave everybody off with today, which is there's a sort of saying throughout all of The Crow 1994, which is it can't rain all the time. And the irony is that in the city they're in, it rains all the time. See, the differences between this and the 94 version is there was a semblance of hope and love and joy. This movie literally ends bleak. And I'm not going to spoil the ending because I'm not a dick, but the ending is the most frustrating part of this movie because it makes the whole thing confusing, and it really does make you feel like you wasted your fucking time. And at the end of the 1994 version, despite all of the violence, the killing, the way the city is set up, how bleak the story is, the fact that our protagonist dies, right? You still feel hopeful. You feel like, despite everything, the message the movie conveys is that no matter how dark and shitty things are, there's always tomorrow. There's always a chance to make a better day. There's always hope, even in darkness. That to me is what the 1994 version conveyed. This conveyed nothing. 2024 Crow conveyed nothing to me. I still don't know what the point is. I don't know what the message of the artist and what he was trying to say. I know on a generic surface level, it's supposed to be the very generic love never dies thing. Fine. But what makes you stand out? Absolutely nothing. Oh, the special effects are cooler. You got one or two cool set pieces. That doesn't make a good movie. At the end of the day, what makes a movie last, what leaves a lasting impression, and what gets people to rewatch or give a shit about the product that you put out is if you have something that they can emotionally connect to. Because at the end of the day, media is subjective. Everybody's going to have different opinions. But what makes something universally praised and loved is if we can all, on some level, share the same point of view on the project that you're making. That is what makes something truly special. Oh, hello, Sergeant Grant's Rising Renegades, because the 2024 remake is a freaking mess. Pardon the word. Yeah, and I agree. That's the issue that I have with this movie. Now, look, this movie, before that director said that statement that pissed me off, I even said this movie had potential, but the issues that I had surrounding it, and you can check out my non spoiler review, I rant for about 56 minutes. But the issue that I have with this is not the fact that you can't touch something sacred. It's the fact of how they chose to present the story. And I think you put it the best. It's a mess. The first hour and 40 minutes is just nothing. And then you have the last half hour that's all action. And when you look at the 1994 movie, literally, as soon as you start the movie, Brandon Lee's fucking people up. Like, he rises from the dead, he goes and gets his guitar, gets his cool fucking stuff, and starts jumping from rooftop to rooftop in the pouring rain, and we're off to the races. And then they fill in the backstory with the flashes that he has. And in every scene, you get a sense of the undying love that this character had. I got more from like 5-second flashes in the 94 version, right? They conveyed everything I needed to know about how much he loved Shelley, what kind of person Shelley was, how they were, the kind of living situation they were in, what their hopes and dreams were. I got all of this in pieced flashbacks, where in this movie, you get a whole 45 minutes with these characters, and through shitty acting and dialogue, I get no sense of how they feel about each other. And that's one of my biggest issues, because if you're going to center your whole new version on this love story, then the characters need to be good. And I'm sorry, FKA Twigs sucks. She is terrible in this movie. I do not buy anything about her character. And I certainly don't buy she's in love with this person she just met. And they don't give it a year, they don't do a time jump. They literally expect you to believe that these two characters fall in love in the span of a week, meeting each other in a fucking rehab. Like, do I think two people in rehab could fall in love and better each other? Yes. Do I buy the way they set up the situation in this movie? No, because it logically makes no sense. I mean, anybody, if you know somebody who has one of these stories, you can feel free to correct me, but I personally don't buy it. I think it's a shitty, terrible setup just to get the story moving, and there's no narrative reason for it to be in the movie. Even a lot of movie projects that get canceled, like those that were canceled by Warner Bros. Discovery in 2022, had potential. For The Crow, I thought there was just one movie, but no, there were, yeah. And I'll tell you something, the 4 sequels are better than this movie. Like, I'm going to, on my channel, review the rest of the Crow movies just so you guys can get an idea. But the show Stairway to Heaven was quite good. Uh, Crow City of Angels, I thought was a good movie, but it was overshadowed by Brandon Lee's death, so it got panned by a lot of critics. The third Crow is terrible, and the fourth one is so bad it's good. Like, the fourth Crow, you have Edward Furlong, you have David Boreanaz and Tyra Reid. Like, that's a hell of a cast, and all during the prime, like American Pie, David Boreanaz was on Angel and Buffy, and Edward Furlong, of course, was in one of the most iconic movies of all time, Terminator 2. So, I mean, like, even with that cast, they knew what kind of movie they were in, and I think that makes it more fun. This has nothing. This isn't just so bad that you can mock it like Madam Web or Morbius or any of them. This is just boring and in the middle and doesn't do anything interesting. That's what makes this so tragic and why I'm so pissed off about it, because it doesn't have enough potential to suck where I can mock it, and it doesn't elevate itself to even bring it into the conversation of being a good movie. So it's like right here doing absolutely nothing. It's just another soulless. It's like that new Footloose that came out, right? That wasn't really egregiously bad. I wasn't personally offended, but the songs didn't hit. The premise was basically the original, and it didn't do nothing interesting. So once again, it just sits in a mid status and doesn't move anywhere. And that's why I wanted to bring up adaptations today. And I know I didn't talk about much of DC. That's what I do in the afternoons, but I think this does go a lot to comics in general and what makes a good adaptation, because I think Hollywood is grossly confused. What makes an adaptation successful? Look at Batman throughout its history. That franchise has had more hits than misses. And it's because they understand the character, the essence, the city, what brings the world alive. Even the worst Batman adaptation hits it somewhere, because at the end of the day, you don't have to perfectly adapt something, but you do have to capture what made that something good. Okay? You don't need to adapt the story, you need to adapt the soul. You need to adapt the essence of that art. If you do that, then people will have an open mind about it. But if you just go and change everything and try to make it trendy and try to follow in the footsteps of better movies, you're going to fail. And that's what this proves. And I don't think it's worse than Borderlands. Borderlands was a terrible movie, but I do think it's very mid. It's a very mid movie. So thank you everybody for watching. I really appreciate it. Check out the beginning of the video. Go check out the channel that I suggested. It's in my links in the description, and watch their video, Another Nick. I think he perfectly encapsulated my thoughts and feelings on this in a way that I don't know I could express without ranting. And I do appreciate the feedback on my non-spoiler review. And if you haven't seen it, go check out my non-spoiler review of The Crow. It'll probably be in my lives. I got to put it in my movie reviews list, but you can check out my movies review list for all of my other movies that I've done, including Borderlands. But yeah, for me, this was just more of a disappointment, and I didn't want to say anything until I read the article, and you can check that out at the beginning of the stream, of what the director had to say. I think if you make a bad movie, you should take the criticism, and directors need to stop making fun of their audience for giving their opinion, because some people actually like this movie. I even had it on the comments in my video. So some people do like this movie. So I think insulting everyone who does it is in bad form, and directors need to stop doing that. It's fucking stupid. Just take your loss and move on. Stop insulting people just because a good majority of people thought you made a shitty product. And the irony of the whole thing is, if you look on Rotten Tomatoes, it's like at a 65 for audience and a 21 for critics, which is the first time I ever sided with critics on Rotten Tomatoes as opposed to the audience. So coming out and blaming the audience for your failure is stupid. You're just pissing off people who actually endorsed your shitty movie. Well, what do I know? Anyways, thank you everybody for watching. I'd like to thank the sponsors of the channel, moviepalettes.com. If you like the original Crow, 1994, go on to moviepalettes.com, type in the Crow, 1994, and put in my code ZONE15, and you can save 15% off of your purchase. And if they already have a sale, you get an additional sale and the 15% on top of whatever the sale price is. So thank you, moviepalettes.com, for sponsoring the channel. And thank you everybody for watching. And as always, remember, there is only one rule here in the fandom zone: kneel before General Zod.